Hello, my name is Samuel Aamoth, and today I will be reviewing the article titled Five Strategies to Infuse Diversity and Inclusion into Your Organization. It was authored by Gina Cox and David Lansfield, published May 19th, 2021, on the Harvard Business Review. Now, basic summary of this article is it's a lot to do with the battle that people are facing with people knowing the fact that diversity and inclusion are a good thing and being okay with that, and then on top of that, actually getting to an inclusive spot or incorporating that diversity into your organization in a way that's seen and is used and acted upon in a regular way. So, essentially, this article suggests five things that will help improve diversity and inclusion within your organization. So, first, to ensure the CEO positions themselves as the champion for the diversity and inclusion efforts. Second one's going to be to center diversity and inclusion in part of your business strategy, not just an HR department. And then third, we'll have holding executive leaders accountable for diversity and inclusion outcomes. And then fourth, mitigate implicit bias at a systematic level. And then finally, we're going to be pivoting from diversity training to leadership training, which is all kind of stuff that we have discussed a little bit throughout class. But first and foremost, it's easy to establish that diversity is good, and that's something that the article really touches on. It wanted to state that it can also, not only is it good for people and do people know it's good, but it increases the amount of talent you see in your company, can increase employee engagement, and it can improve customer willingness to cooperate with your company if they know you're a good, diverse company. So the article first starts out by touching on kind of the murder of George Floyd, and in the fact that this is an event that really was a catalyst in sparking the fact that there are still so many social injustices that we are facing today, and it's important to bring that into light, and it has brought into light and kind of in that way made organizations more accountable for making sure that they are encouraging diversity and inclusion. So historically, um, races or non-dominant groups or races of color have been subject to lower than expected hiring rates. More often than not, are they looked over by white applicants who may even be just as qualified or the same qualifications as a person of color or non-dominant group. They have lower than expected representation in white collar and leadership jobs. Um, there's mostly white people in upper management, and that's something that's been noted throughout history at this point. And then finally, they have negative day-to-day experiences. Now, the article goes to elaborate a little bit further, saying 31% of Asian people and 25% of Black and Hispanic people are used to hearing stereotypical comments at work. Now, that's something that most white people don't have to deal with on an average day, and it's something that they are facing. Now, it goes on to talk a little bit more about how in 2020 and started 2021 that these bigger companies like McDonald's, Microsoft, Boeing are all putting on bigger diversity programs and really pushing for diversity and inclusion, but it also notes the fact that not much has changed even since then. It's still falls into that category of, yes, we know diversity is good and we want to have it, but how do we get it? How do we get to that goal? How do we really accomplish what we want to see in our diversity and inclusion programs? So the article suggests that we take a new approach. And by that, the five suggestions that they do offer that I kind of read off earlier. And then it goes into a little bit more detail about each of these five suggestions to make your organization better at diversity and inclusion. So first, ensure the CEO positions themselves as the champion of the diversity efforts. Now, they state it's very important that the CEO takes a public stance on this and really makes it known that they are on the side of diversity and inclusion and they are willing to help. Now, they use specific examples, one of which was Nielsen CEO David Kenny. So he made himself or appointed another position called the the CDO, Chief Diversity Officer, and put that as part of his responsibilities that he needed to take care of, and throughout which he would target specific tasks and design certain ways to accomplish those tasks to have a more complete diversity and inclusion. Next, you have center diversity and inclusion in the business strategy. So the article goes to say that diversity and inclusion is more than just an HR issue, that it should be an actual part of your business strategy. Good example of this one was Alex Gorski, CEO of Johnson & Johnson, basically has put into their strategy that their diversity and inclusion is actually one of their strongest competitive advantages in the industry. And it's because you get an all-around better idea of different ideas by taking them from everyone, getting all walks of ideas and combining that together to come up with the best possible solution for the problem at hand. Moving on to the third issue, so hold executive leaders accountable for driving diversity and inclusion outcomes. So this is simply stating that the CEOs and upper management should be held accountable for making sure that diversity and inclusion is working. Now it states two specific ones: diversity results that focus on representation, so hiring, promotion. How are you helping make sure that your hiring, promoting process is fair to everyone? And then two, inclusion results that focus on day-to-day experience. Now this more so is referring to employee engagement. How do people feel at work? Do they feel like they're in a safe and inclusive environment? And these are things that you should be focusing on. Now, Starbucks and McDonald's are already working on implementing these strategies into their overall business plan as well. So, moving on to the fourth strategy here, we have mitigate implicit bias at the systematic level. Now, this one really the article really talks about hopping in and assessing different systematic biases that exist. So they list a few of them and basically state that it's best to avoid doing these, and these are things that you shouldn't be doing. But so avoid recruiters only advising or only taking recruits from one recruiter or one school. Don't have hiring managers select criteria that is unrelated to the job and pre-pick candidates or pre-vet candidates before they've even had an interview yet. Basically, also don't focus on only promoting within. Give everybody an opportunity to present their merit more or less, rather than selecting people on who they know. And finally, basically, managers don't select people of color for client-facing revenue-generating jobs, is what it specifically was saying on that one. And these are all things that we should be avoid doing to create a more diverse and inclusive workplace. And then finally, so moving from diversity training to leadership development and coaching. Now, this is something that we actually have talked about a lot in class. It's important to not just have people there to encourage them to be diverse, and that diversity is good. However, it is important to teach them how to identify when discrimination is happening, how to solve these problems on hand rather than just reporting them to HR, something along those lines. Now, how does this article apply to our class? Very, very simple. It's all about inclusion and diversity, and it's about how you can make that work without just telling people about it. So how can you be proactive, create affirmative action to actually take care of these problems and get to real solutions rather than just acknowledging the fact that we do have a problem and it does exist, but then doing nothing to absolve that problem. And yet again, as most of these articles do, they tie back into diversity fatigue, in my opinion. It's really showing that people are used to hearing that diversity is good and they know it's a good thing, but they don't know how to act upon it. Now, how would I handle this if I was the manager? I think these are all pretty fantastic ideas. If you aren't willing to get involved with your company, that just shows that you don't really. It shows a lack of care on your part, even if you don't intend to. Being involved in all the things that you're doing, and especially things you want your employees to do, is a real good way to get them to work with you. Now, how I had similar situations. We do some diversity training at work, but I fall more on the end of actual being aware of and being told it's good rather than us including it in our day to day. And then my final impression, I think these are all really good ideas. I think it all ties back into being proactive, taking affirmative action, and really making sure that you are doing or acting how you want to be seen and how you want other people to act.